Hello and welcome to Springwatch Unsprung, coming to you live from the fabulous RSPB Minsmere Reserve in Suffolk. And we're joined this evening by some of the Minsmere staff and some of the local people around here. We apologise for that, but they're full of gusto, they're full of verve, they're full of spirit, and they love this area, and so do we now. We've been here for 3 years. It's a fantastic place to be. Our remit, if you're not a regular Springwatch viewer, is to bring you the fabulous wildlife that lives here live. For 3 weeks, end of May, beginning of June. We started last night and already we've got some fantastic things in our programme. Let's take a look at the sorts of things we like to see. Here we are, got dragonflies here. We like close-up views of common birds. Sometimes we chase rarities and the exotic, like a golden eagle, which we're all terribly excited about. More of these in our 8 o'clock programme coming up later. But we champion the underdog, because this is a programme which is designed to appeal to everyone, not just experts. Well, there will be experts here. I've no doubt there are some in the audience, but we want you to get involved, even if you just bought your very first bird book. So do contact us and do ask us questions and do contribute when you can. Now, one of the things we have are people who come to join us, and tonight I've got to say we've got a couple of very special guests indeed. Our first is an actor. Now, he joined EastEnders initially as a lovable rogue, but then he became an arch Machiavellian manipulator. A Mitchell, you see. But he was finally killed by a very large bust. I don't know if Barbara Windsor was involved, but let's find out. Larry Lamb might be able to tell us later. Larry, thank you very much. You were coshed in the Queen Vic, I think.
A very large bust, yes. Nobody knew who did it, and I didn't know it, because when they did it, they wouldn't tell me who did it. And that was it, so I didn't know who did it, the same as anybody else didn't know who did it, until 6 months later when they revealed who did it, and suddenly I realised what I'd been doing when I didn't know what I'd been doing. It was a bit of a conundrum.
I'm rather pleased I'm not working on EastEnders, because most of us around here haven't got a clue what we're doing. Maybe slightly more than that. Larry, we'll be chatting with you a bit later on.
Lovely.
Our other guest is a long-term friend of the programme. He's an extraordinary ornithologist. He can observe birds in the wild, of course, but he has an extraordinary ability to engage with them intuitively in captivity, the birds that he keeps himself. He is the one and only Lloyd Buck, and he's here with the remarkable Tilly the golden eagle. She all right, Lloyd?
Yeah, she's cool, yeah.
Very cool, I'd say. I'd say about the coolest you can get. Absolutely fantastic. OK, Lloyd, we're going to come back and have a chat with you and Larry in a moment. But first, let's go over here. Lindsay.
Hi.
How are you? I'm
very well, thank you. I've had another busy day. People very much enjoying the golden eagle and its chick last night. Obviously going to enjoy tonight's show with Tilly then. Anne Evans says, how do such majestic birds be so tender with their chicks? It was a really nice moment, wasn't it, as well? And people, of course, commenting on Martin's hair, which was a real feature. If you have a look at this, lots of people comparing it to a lapwing. Tracy Gill on Twitter says she wonders if there's something nesting in it.
Well, no, that was a display. Those were his erectile nuptial plumes. Of course. He was displaying quite who to down on the scope. I would worry about, to be quite honest.
And check this out, look, a themed shirt.
Very nice, actually, that themed shirt.
Nice, isn't it? Yeah.
Very nice, isn't it? A mixture of Orthoptera on there, yeah. Odonata, not Orthoptera, that was grasshoppers. Yeah, Odonata.
Let's have a look then at some of the things we've been sent in. Now, I've picked this beautiful picture of a water vole, because we've had quite a lot of rain here today. This is by Stuart Shaw. I thought that was a fab picture. It's cute, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite nice. The grass in the foreground's a bit irritating. I've just gone for the moss. But yes, it's a marvellous picture in profile. A lovely little water vole there.
I also found this very interesting video. We were sent this. This is really very interesting, I think. This is tadpoles sent in by Mark Baldwin, who says he doesn't have much in his pond for them to feed on. So basically, he puts a bit of steak in for them to have every few days. What do you think about that?
What do I think about that? Well, I mean, yes, they are carnivorous, so they will eat steak, but you mustn't put too much in. My mother once put a huge lump of liver into a jam jar full of tadpoles that I had, and that rather did for them. I have to say, I've been in the news for eating tadpoles myself this week.
Oh, good.
You make a joke at a literary festival, 500 people in the audience laugh, and 2 journalists think you're serious about it. All of a sudden, it's all over the news.
Bad news.
People are complaining. Listen, you don't really have to eat tadpoles to develop a lifelong interest in natural history. All I was saying is it didn't do me much harm.
Let's move on quickly, actually, to something else that's eating something strange. Have a look at this picture that we've been sent in. This is a sparrow eating a mouse, possibly sent in by Annie. What do you think of that?
That's extraordinary, isn't it? Now, I mean, at this time of year, obviously sparrows, like all of these birds, are feeding protein to their young. They're typically a granivorous bird. They eat seeds. They wouldn't go after meat, but they might be tempted to feed any meat to their young. But I've never seen anything like that. Perhaps one of our viewers has seen something like that, had an observation. If you have, if you know anything about starlings predating mice or scavenging, let us know.
Absolutely. Now let's talk very quickly about owls, because I spotted this picture here that's been sent in by Ron of this little owl, which looks very happy indeed. But in the background is rain, and I thought owls didn't like rain. Our little owls aren't enjoying it here.
Generally, owls don't like rain. They've got quite soft feathers, which enables them to fly very quietly, and they get waterlogged quite easily. The other thing is, of course, rain makes a tremendous amount of noise when it's pitter-pattering on the ground, and certain species like barn owls and tawny owls are highly reliant on their hearing ability, not just their remarkable eyesight, to find their prey. So typically, no, they don't like it. Little owls, though, I think they probably use their eyes a little more. They're a diurnal hunter. They come out in the evening. I'm not saying they're going to like rain, but anyone perched on an idle way sign like that, you know, it's a good photo. That was a good photo.
Fabulous photo, thank you. Let's move swiftly on to, well, very quickly, I'll just tell you, if you want to see our live cameras, go to bbc.co.uk/Springwatch, press the play button, and you can watch our live cameras there. Now, let's move on to the quiz. We started our quiz last night with the skulls. This is the second night of it, set by Melanie, who has an amazing collection of animal skulls. Let's take a look at tonight's quiz.
OK.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and this is my quiz for you. This animal is symbolic of spring and is widely loved by people. This animal has its young above ground, unlike its relative, which digs burrows. Can you name this skull?
Interesting.
OK, the audience could be thinking about that too.
Have a think, have a think.
I'll ask you at the end.
There's quite a big clue in that one, I think.
I think there was a very large.
Yeah, now head to our website. All the links are on there about how to get in touch. Use the hashtag Springwatch as well. And take another look at the video on our page as well if you want a bit more information. Watch it again.
Excellent. OK, let's move on to our first guest, the one and only Mr. Larry Lamb. Let's hear it for Larry. Larry, thank you so much. Larry, in terms of acting skills, you've been putting it about. Superman.
Putting it about?
Putting it about. Superman. Then, of course, EastEnders, where you had a prominent role. Gavin and Stacey, too.
Yeah. Well, you get lucky. You know, that's what happens. You get lucky. All of a sudden, you know, you've had a life of working as an actor. You do OK, you make a living, and then suddenly, right out of the blue, something like that happens. And then... You know, in fact, the funny thing was that Gavin and Stacey had happened before that. And normally what happens when you sign up for EastEnders is they rule the roost and you're not taken on if you've got anything else on the go. But when we did Gavin and Stacey, it was such an unknown thing. They didn't bother to sign us up for subsequent episodes.
They didn't realise it was going to get big.
They didn't. And then what happened was, you know, I thought, I'm going to have to make a choice here. But the boss of the BBC at the time said, no, you're going to do both. And so that was it. They managed to put the two together, which was quite extraordinary because, you know, you might in the course of a lifetime, a career, get to play both those parts. But to play them simultaneously was just quite extraordinary.
Bit of a treat. Aside from treading the boards indoors, you like a life outdoors as well. I mean, from the time you were young, living in Essex. Yeah,
well, the thing is, I was one of the kids that came from the edges of London and plonked down in what was then a new town, Harlow, in Essex. And, of course, you know, new towns were exactly that. They started to build them usually on the edge of an existing village or whatever, and Harlow, the old town, was there. But then they took, you know, hundreds of acres of farmland and started to build a town. And so you walked to the end of the street and there was just mud and ploughed fields. And so our places to play were the forests. You know, you went to the woods, you went and played in the woods.
Birds nesting?
But birds nesting wasn't my particular thing. I was much more into making bows and arrows and catapults and, you know, breaking things.
This is going badly wrong here, man.
Burning things, having fires and
Hunting
doing all
birds.
those sort of things. We used to keep, like when it was bonfire night, that was the one legal fire, so we'd keep the bonfire going for weeks out on the old rough ground. Back you go every night and burn something.
We can laugh, but at least, you know, we were part of a generation where kids were allowed outside to explore that environment.
That's where you went outside, you went out to play.
And it was healthy.
All the time. I can remember the whole of the summer holidays, you played out. That was it. You went out in the morning, you maybe came back for something to eat during the middle of the day, and you usually got home by the time it was dark. Or they got a bit worried.
But you still go out in the countryside. You were fond of wandering through Richmond Park.
Yeah, well, that came much later. I was living in Teddington, and so I used to walk every day. Like I'd do a great big circuit and go through Bushy Park in particular, where there's a very, very big and active herd of deer. and which is great at certain times of the year, and other times of the year it gets a bit scary because if you're walking through the heather breaks there, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you can be confronted by these colossal bucks, you know, these great big fellas. No offence, Lloyd, but yeah, I mean, just extraordinary great big animals when they're rutting.
We got
bit
here
scary.
Well, that's not a great big one. This is
that's
a
not a great big
little
one.
muntjac.
That's the sort I can deal
Chris,
with.
I've
That
actually
sort.
been sent a tweet of a deer as well, which is a nice one for Larry. So just on my computer here, should be able to see this brilliant picture that we've been sent in of a deer. There it is. I'd love a caption for that if anyone has one. It's red deer.
Is that a deer?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's passed its driving test.
I see, yeah.
Well, quite how it gets in there with the headroom, I'm not entirely sure. Off to top gear with that one.
Top gear.
Now, what about the parakeets? Because down there, they've really taken off, quite literally. The population's expanding rapidly.
Richmond, all around that area, yeah. You see them in the park and they just move around that whole area. I mean, I'm assuming they must have escaped from, you know, they must have escaped from a private
One of the stories is that, well, no, one of the stories is that they escaped from Pinewood on a film set.
Oh, really?
Some people say it was the African Queen.
That's
Some people say that they got out of Jimi Hendrix's garden.
There you go. Much more glamorous, right? I mean, yeah, I just thought...
But aside from seeing them, you can also hear them. I think we've got some sound of parakeets we can let you hear.
Yeah. When you're walking, that's always the giveaway there. When you hear them, you know they're up there mobbing up in those trees. And of course, everything else stays away.
Are you a fan of the parakeet? Bear in mind, there's a lot of, you know, sort of contention in the conservation world because these aren't a native species, and some people get very het up about non-native species.
Yeah, but I'm sure during the history of you know of animals and birds developing, they all go through a stage where they're not native to the area, right? They're moving in. That's why we're
Let's
here.
hear it for Larry. Part and parcel of the process, isn't it, really? Things move around.
Absolutely.
People move around, animals move around too. But you've been moving around on the reserve today, and I think we can take a look at your antics out here.
Yeah.
Something much bigger than a sand martin flew into one of those holes, but I was too slow to get it. It looked like maybe an owl or something, but maybe an owl wouldn't be out in the day, would it? What do I know? I'm not a bird watcher.
What was it? What did fly into the hole?
I don't know. I just realised there was some great big thing flying into that great big hole next to the little ones.
Jackdaw, maybe?
No, it wasn't a jackdaw. That I would have recognised, but it was a fawny coloured thing. I thought maybe it was some sort of an owl. I don't know.
What do you think? It's a little owl.
No, we saw it Monday. They couldn't make out what it was.
You think it might have been a little owl? Yeah. Down by the San Martin colony. Come on, there must be someone from the RSPB here, you know. My goodness me.
There are some big holes
We'll
there
have to get
next to
down
all the
there.
small ones.
Okay.
You know.
Now, every day when we have a guest on the programme, we set them a challenge. And the challenge is to represent Minsmere, the environment, or one of the species here in artistic form. So we give them 10 minutes with a range of artist materials, everything from crayons, pencils, felt tip, glue, so on and so forth. And they've got to come up with a picture. It's part of a competition. So, Naomi, how did you do? Come on, let's have a look. Come on, let's get it out.
Say, what they don't hand you is talent. But, there we
Let's have
go.
a look at it here. OK, you've gone for the sort of... what is that? Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot of appreciation in the audience for your cartoon, Larry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark you, because it is a competition here. It's down to my subjective judgment, I'm afraid. Our two entrants yesterday, Clive Anderson, well, we put them in the middle because we didn't know whether you were going to be better or worse, of course. So we've got, Clive's here, and Lucy Jones' sort of 3D collage piece there. Larry, I like the diversity of species.
I'm amazed I got that far from the bottom, I tell you.
Yeah, but in our Drawn to be Wild competition, I'm afraid you're nudging towards the mild. OK, yeah. Lindsay, what do you think?
I think I very much like it, but it's probably in about the right place. Okay. Now, this year on Unsprung, we're celebrating the incredible people who devote so much of their time to conservation work. And this week, we're going to celebrate Libby Houston, who does amazing work in Bristol on the Avon Gorge. She's done a lot of research, and the work she's been doing has helped save over 70 species of plants on the gorge. Martin Hughes Games went to meet Libby and have a look at her new work with Unsprung Hero.
Libby, I think I first met you actually on the rocks here underneath the suspension bridge. And I must confess, I was a bit surprised to meet you on the rocks.
I was working as a secretary in a solicitor's office, but I did notice that they were shot blasting the bridge with toxic copper slag abrasive, but they didn't put any screens up, and so all the shot blasting stuff went straight past, fell down onto the cliffs. So it became a campaign that I was part of to get it cleaned up.
So, Libby, by then you already had an interest in botany, so you were concerned this slag would be damaging the native botany here.
Well, yes, so Natural England said to me, Libby, we've done it, we got the money, so you can clean it up. Oh, me? Well, so I suddenly found myself being part of a men's rope access team for working on the cliff every day from October to Christmas.
So you sort of fell into the rope
I
work
fell
then,
into it,
as a
yeah.
result of that conservation effort?
Yes.
I haven't done this for a while. Obviously, I'd never dream of mentioning the fact that it'll be your 75th birthday next birthday.
Well, I'm in my 75th year.
75th year.
Yeah.
I think Libby's really the absolute authority on the plants of the Avon Gorge. Libby's sort of doing more recognised work, I think, perhaps these days, but there's so much work that she's done in the past that she just does in her own time. She's just unstoppable.
Libby, am I right? There is a tree here that is named after you.
I'm sorry to say that there is only one.
Looks a bit like a cliff edge there, Libby. How on earth did you find this tree in the first place?
There it is, that's my tree.
That's amazing, Libby. I've never met anyone, I don't think, who's had a living organism named after them. What's its proper name?
Sorbus houstonii.
Sorbus houstonii, or
Houston's whitebeam.
That's absolutely fabulous. But when it comes into leaf, fully into leaf, does it look particularly different from the other quite rare ones around us as well?
To me, it looks completely different. It's a child of Bristol whitebeam, so it could only have happened in the Avon Gorge. And I hope you'll remember exactly how to get there again.
I would never find it in a million years. It's quite safe.
Achievement. Libby, it gives me enormous honour to present you with our very first Unsprung Hero Award.
I'm amazed.
Now, it's only a small badge, but we have a certificate that goes with it. And I won't ask you to kneel, but I will kneel for you. There we are. Marvellous, absolutely marvellous. Protecting a species and discovering your own.
Just incredible, and
that's going to be tough to beat.
it really is. We are going to be meeting more Unsprung heroes across the series, though, and some exclusives online, so do have a look. And if you want to nominate anyone, then get in touch with us. Use the hashtag Springwatch, but so well done to you.
Thank you. Well,
OK, thanks, Libby. Now we're going to go over to Lloyd. I'm going to move cautiously here. Well, not cautiously, but just gently. How is she? How's Tilly,
Fine,
Lloyd?
she's good.
OK, tell us a bit about her. How old is she?
Tilly will be 16 this year.
16?
Yeah.
Pretty good. They go on into their 20s, though, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully captivity 30 to 40 years.
30 to 40?
Yeah.
In captivity. Now, going back, Lloyd, what got you into birds in the first place?
I was always fascinated with birds since I was a small boy. I started off with a budgerigull, Then moved on to parakeets.
You moved on to things that are slightly bigger, yeah.
Cockatiels, parakeets. Then I got into birds of prey when I was sort of 10, 11 years old.
Yeah. But the thing is that you and your wife, Rose, have an extraordinary ability, I don't want to sort of blow your ego out of all proportion here, but to get into the minds of these birds. I've never met anyone who can train them the way that you can. I mean, what is it? Is the time, the observation, the intensity of that observation?
Well, I suppose we always say, actually, in a funny sort of way, we don't train them to do anything. What we do is spend a lot of time with them, so you get a close social bond, and then you utilise what they do naturally, but we do it use it in unusual ways for the camera. Because you're always trying to replicate natural behaviour one way and another for natural history. You're just maybe doing it in an unusual fashion.
I've got to ask a question, and I don't mean this in any way flippantly. Are they your friends? Are they your mates?
They're a part of our family. They're, 7 days a week. You can't just forget about them and go on holiday. It's what we do. It's a lifestyle more than anything, keeping the birds.
Absolutely fantastic. And you use them for filming, of course. I think we've got a clip of some of your birds on here. This was Life on Air.
Ah, yes.
And what have we got? We've got the swans here performing.
Oh, yeah, when we went to Scotland.
So who have we got, Lloyd?
We've got yellow, Arthur, white and olive. Yellow is leader.
Yeah.
And he was often the one in front of the camera on the gimbal there after, because he's nearly always lead bird.
Yeah.
That or Olive, but Rose is leader. They're imprinted on Rose.
Your wife, yeah.
Yeah, and we've had them since they hatched.
There she is.
There she is. So she's obviously head of the formation. So they're basically making a formation off of Rose.
That's fantastic. I love the way they're flying just behind you.
Yeah, Rose has got a wonderful relationship with them. They can be quite stroppy to me. I'm low down in the pecking order.
Oh, yes. What happens if you upset a stroppy swan?
Well, it's not. They give you a crack with their wing. They put me in my place.
But let's just put one thing to rest. You know that old wives' tale about, swans being able to break your arm with their wing?
No,
Nonsense,
never.
Absolutely.
You'd have to have brittle bone disease or something, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you would. OK, now look, you've taken part in our arts challenge as well, Lloyd.
Yes.
Here's the picture down here. I'm going to take a look at this whilst we swap Tilly for another set of species. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we have... Oh, no, which way up does it go? I think it goes this way up. Here is Lloyd's achievement. I was going to say effort, but I better not be that rude. He's a mate. There we are. What do you think of Lloyd's then? I think we can call that applause reluctant, if I'm very honest with you. Anyway, I'm going to place Lloyd's over here. Let's go and see what we can make of this. Yeah, that was a bit of a dirge, Lloyd. I mean, I'd like to say it was impressionist, but I think I'd be pushing it, so I'm afraid that we're sinking down. No, I know. Yeah. It's sort of primitive, it's childlike, but it's just not really hitting the mark.
We have had some brilliant things come in, though. If you could take a quick look at this, people clearly taking inspiration from our competition. This has been sent in to us by Jane Holford Atkin, and it's female sparrowhawks, which is really lovely from our live cameras. There's a couple more. Let's have a quick look on my computer here. This is Anna Terreros Martin with a golden eagle chick that she just sketched during last night's show, of course. And we've also had this lovely beginning of a badger as well. Let me just show you that. There we go. Have a look at that. So people are taking inspiration from our
beginning
challenge.
of a badger.
It's good.
I kind of like the beginning of a badger. I tell you what, we could inaugurate another competition here. Why don't we inaugurate one where our viewers can sketch some of the stars of the show and send in the pictures, and we'll put them on during Unsprung.
That sounds
there
nice.
We are. Then we won't
Let's do
put
it.
quite so much pressure on our guest and our abilities. OK, Lloyd, you're back here and you're about to introduce us to another set of your mates.
Yeah, you ready?
Yes, we're all ready.
Come on, boys.
So these are your starlings. How long have you had them, Lloyd?
We've had them... They'll go all over the place. 8 years. They're 8 years old this year.
8?
Yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
They are amazing. I love them.
What do you think, Larry?
Yeah. I've never been close to a starling before, but, these are rather nice. Yeah. I just love their colouring. They always look rather drab, but when you get up close like this, you really realise they're rather beautiful.
They've got that beautiful iridescence, haven't they?
Yeah. But, Larry, like you, they're stars of stage and screen. I mean, these were in Poldark, I think.
Yes,
Ernie.
There we are.
Hold on a minute.
That's Ernie.
OK. So, Lloyd, there's an enormous amount of effort there. It takes weeks to get them on one axe handle, and the shot lasts for 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
But it looked good.
Show business.
But you've been using to promote nest boxes being put up in London as well. Tell me a bit about that.
That's been great. Yeah, with Ernie, he's the only one who will go in a nest box. The others are not so keen. They're sort of, they will and they won't, but Ernie's very reliable. So the idea is, for East Village in London, is to promote people to put bird boxes up. They've made bird boxes in very unusual ones, not quite exotic.
Oh, my goodness, right, OK, yeah, that's a bit of an... there's the gherkin nest box.
Ernie coming out.
Yes, that's sort of architecturally ambitious, isn't it?
That's half going past. So they're great ideas, and it's trying to inspire people to put boxes up in, small suburban gardens in the city.
And of course it's required, because we mustn't forget that starlings are a bird that have gone in our lifetimes from being extraordinarily common through a rapid decline to being a rarity in some parts. We just don't see the numbers.
No, massive in other places, and they're becoming a real nuisance. Like Rome, they've got a huge problem with starlings.
A problem with starlings?
A problem. Literally having to walk around with umbrellas because there are so many of them, and it's all becoming a bit embarrassing. Really.
Decorating them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind that too much, to be honest with you.
Quite extraordinary.
Lloyd, thank you ever so much for bringing them in. They are absolute stars. I'm going to walk across there, and I'm going to do it very cautiously. I don't want to tread on any of your boys. Yeah, OK, fantastic. We have a ripple of applause for these starlings. Seriously. Coming towards the end, Lindsay.
Really does race by. People are talking quite a lot about the sparrow picture with the mouse. Don Sparks says, could it be that the mouse is maggot-ridden and the...
Good idea.
Yeah, the sparrow is eating them. So that's literally just come in right now. Also, we had this question earlier. This is a picture that was sent in, and it looks like a double-tailed lizard. So if you take a look at this now, that's really... different. Fred Field sent that in. He says, what's going on?
It is a double-tailed lizard, and sometimes when these animals shed their tails, if they're attacked by a predator, the idea is that the tail wriggles very, very vigorously whilst the rest of the animal skulks away, leaving the predator to consume the tail and not itself. The tail does regrow, and on occasions it will regrow with 2 parts of that tail instead of just one. Something goes wrong at the formation of the growth point, and it has 2. Actually, sometimes you get 2-headed snakes, and very, very occasionally 2-headed lizards, but that's the way they normally emerge from the egg. Obviously, if they can't lose a head and regrow 2 new ones. So, but you do see 2-headed snakes as well.
Amazing stuff, thank you very much. We need to get back to the quiz, of course.
The quiz,
At this point, let's take a little recap. This is our quiz from earlier on. This is what we set you. Melanie asked what this skull was. I've had a few answers. I've had Steve saying, is it a badger? Mark saying, is it a puffin? Does anyone in the audience have any ideas what they think it might be?
What do you think?
Hare, OK. I had quite a few people saying hare. Lauren, Sarah Byrne, Barbara Munt, Wildlife Watcher Ryan, lots of people saying hare. Let's find out from Melanie just what the skull is.
So, this is a brown hare.
Excellent.
So well done.
Top work. Here is a brown hare skull, very kindly brought in by a lady over there. She tells me it's her pride and joy. I've already let a tooth fall out of it. It's a bit smelly to be a pride and joy. One of the ways we can tell it's a herbivorous animal is this, which is what we call the diastema here. So basically, it bites the food off here and it uses its tongue to turn it around here to chew it on these molars here. Sadly, that's all we've got time for today. Do come back to us at 6:30 tomorrow, and we'll be back with Unsprung. Join us at 8 o'clock for our Springwatch programme then. In the meantime, you can be joined by Lloyd, who's going to be commenting about our live nest on the web. So don't go away in the next hour. Join us with Lloyd. Big round of applause for our guests here.
This stunning bird is an avocet, and it's coming to you live from the RSPB Minsmere Reserve here in Suffolk. It may be beautiful, but it's extremely vulnerable. And this spring, it's having a really tough time protecting those eggs.
The scene is set, let the drama unfold. Curtain up, it's Springwatch.
welcome to Springwatch 2016. It's day 2, and whilst many of you have been enjoying blue skies and sunshine, it's a very different story here on the east coast in Suffolk. In fact, we've been having torrential rain, really horrendous winds, and quite frankly, it feels like winter watch. It's so chilly. It's been cold, hasn't it?
Bitter. I wish I had my thermals on. Okay.
Do you know, I mean, I've heard some people in Cornwall, they've literally got sunburns
I know, they're
basking on
sunbathing
the
now. It
beach.
seems impossible.
Nevertheless, it's a fantastic place to be for wildlife. Yesterday we introduced you to some of the habitats, but one of the most important here at Minsmere has to be the scrape, certainly for conservation. But what is the scrape? Well, it's a series of man-made lagoons with islands on them that have literally been scraped of vegetation, and they're managed for nesting birds that need, well, almost bare land to nest on, and in particular, avocets. Very important place for avocets. In fact, 6% of the UK's breeding avocets come here to nest. 101 nesting pairs this year, that's double last year, which sounds really positive. There is a but there. Beautiful bird. And that's it live.
That's it live. It's very funny because just before we came on air, we were meant to go to it live and it wasn't there, was it?
It was just the eggs.
It was just the eggs, and they came back with like 2 seconds to go. And we've been following the fortunes of those avocets. Let's see what they've been getting up to. They've been very diligent parents. Here's one of them feeding. They use that upturned bill to just sieve out food from the water here. 4 eggs, beautifully camouflaged, just on the ground. And here's one of the parents. It's very difficult to tell the male and female apart, just coming in and settling down on those eggs. They need to turn the eggs a little bit each time they come in. Now, here's the other one coming. They swap over about once every hour. And you can, if you look carefully, you can see the brood patch. It's underneath, it's a sort of bare bit of skin, and that one coming in, male or female, will lift the feathers up. There you go.
See it there, can't you?
Just see it.
Oh, yes, look.
Yep, and a warm bit of skin that just settles down on those eggs and keeps them warm. Now, they've been doing really well, had been, until look at this morning. It was hammering down. Look at that weather. Now, they changed their behaviour because of that weather, probably. They were changing over once every hour, and when it was really raining, they were changing over once every 3 hours, sitting tight, trying to keep those eggs warm.
It looks absolutely miserable on that scrape. It's so open to the elements, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But it's not the only challenge that those poor avocets are facing. In fact, I think of all the birds that we're filming here on the reserve, the ones on the scrape are having the toughest challenge this year. Not one avocet chick has survived so far. In fact, in the last few days, all the chicks on the scrapes have had a really tough time. Why? Well, it's because of the neighbours, the gulls. Gulls are taking complete advantage. That's a lesser black-backed gull taking a black-headed gull chick. So it's not just the avocets that are being completely predated. If you remember, 2 years ago on the scrape, we lost most of the chicks to to a particular badger. But a fence protects them now from Badgergeddon. As a result, there are a lot of gulls that have taken over. And in fact, I think we're facing Gullgeddon this year. So although there might be double the amount of nests, I wonder how many of those are going to survive. It really is proving to be quite a tough spring here, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's almost inevitable, though, isn't it? So many calories just sitting there on the ground. They tend to rely on all the birds, when they all nest together, whooshing up into the air to attack incoming predators. But obviously, they can't hold off those gulls. They're doing rather well. Now, the last 24 hours have been really tough for lots and lots of the birds here at Minsmere, particularly because of the weather. The rain in particular. Now, the stone curlews, flash of lightning, that was a storm coming in towards the stone curlew nest, and then it began to rain. Now, remember, the stone curlews are right out in the open. Now, listen to that noise. We think that was a warning call. There might have been a fox in the air or something. The parent got off the nest, didn't return, terrifyingly, for an hour and 10 minutes, allowing that egg to chill. Now, we think that egg is probably due to hatch tomorrow, so this is the worst possible time for it to have chilled down. Will it actually hatch out? Look at this!
Oh, look at that, Martin.
Terrible
what a shame,
conditions.
Eh?
But now that parent's being incredibly diligent and just sitting there in that pouring rain, looking utterly miserable.
It's absolutely sodden, isn't it? I mean, as I say, it's so challenging for these birds. What do you reckon the chances are of that egg hatching? Not that great?
Well, no, honestly, Michaela, with my chickens, everything goes back to my chickens. With my chickens, sometimes they do come off and they do chill to a remarkable degree and they seem to be able to pick it up again, but it gets more and more difficult later on in the egg's development. So,
and it was really chilly.
It was
really
so
chilly
cold
here
and
last
wet
night.
and cold and wind. Not good.
So as you can see, there's a lot of drama going on that scrape, but it's not the only dramatic nest. Yesterday we left you with a bit of a cliffhanger in the woods.
Cliffhanger? I'll tell you what, Michaela, the drama down here makes Game of Thrones look positively simple at the moment. We'll come to that in a moment. First of all, at this time of year, you've got to think of this woodland here as a giant salad bowl. Each one of these oak trees can have somewhere between 700,000 and 1 million leaves on them. They're soft and luscious, delicious. They're being gobbled up by millions of tiny Tortrix moth caterpillars, which in turn are being gobbled up by all of our tit families here, because at this time of year they form 91.6% of their diet. Let's go to our blue tits down in the woods. We've been watching these very intently. There were 4 in the nest there, and they're being served by a single parent, we think the female. But despite the rain today, she's worked very hard and they are still going. She started off with 13 eggs, she's down to 4 young. She's doing quite well. Our great tits too, we've been keeping an eye on those. There's the exterior view, and inside you can see, in fact, there were 5 little chicks left in this nest. They're not getting as much food as the blue tits are at the moment, but that's possibly because they're smaller and they simply don't need it. But all the rain today is not a great help to these birds because it washes those caterpillars off of the trees. It's great news for the robins and the blackbirds on the ground, but it's bad news for the tits. They have to switch to something else, and we've been watching the nest, and what we've seen, particularly with the great tits, is that they're going for spiders. And this is not unusual. In the first 4, 5, 6 days of feeding their chicks, they do seem to actively choose spiders. What we've got here is the female with the backside, what we call the opistoma, the abdomen, if you like, of a very large spider. And it's a bit big. She tries for some time to get the chicks to take it, and eventually this one decides to give it a go. And after some perseverance, it manages to get it down. What a meal, especially on a rainy day like today. So look, let's think about the ecology. We've got all of these leaves with the caterpillars munching them. Then you've got all of those blue tits munching the caterpillars. What's munching the blue tits? Well, their arch nemesis is munching them, and she is sat about 170 metres away from those nests in the wood. It's the sparrowhawk. And here is the female, live now, on the nest, in the pine tree, which she and her partner have made this year. And she's on 5 eggs. We're not sure when they're going to hatch. We don't know when they were laid. Likely within the next, I would say, week to 10 days. Look at the eyes of that bird. They ooze predatory nature. But at the moment, she's not predating. It's the male that's doing that. He's provisioning her with all of the food. And we know this because we've been watching him every day on his nearby plucking perch. So the male comes in with food, some distance away from the nest. He doesn't want to attract predators. And here you can see quite clearly that that's a blue tit that he's captured and killed. This time the male comes in, and if you look very carefully at the tail of that bird, you can see those little pointed stiff feathers. That tells us that it's a tree creeper. Now, this is where things start to get really, really exciting. Look at the same plucking post, but this time look very closely at the male that's bringing in the next couple of prey items. Here's the male with the great tit. It's a full adult male with a pale throat. He calls the female off, she rouses herself up, she jumps down, and there, she takes the food. He flies off to carry on hunting, of course. She's entirely dependent on him. But look at this. This is a different male. This is a juvenile male. The chest is completely different. Look at his stripy throat. And look at the prey that it's got. It's got a swallow. So there we have 2 different males provisioning the same female at the same time on the same nest, because we've been watching them. Both of them are coming in, bringing prey and then calling the female off, and she's coming in to collect it. Now, this sort of thing has been seen before, there's no doubt about that, but we'll do some more research. And of course, you can keep your eyes peeled on this because these cameras are live on our web, on the red button all of the time. But what about that swallow? Well, there's an interesting story here as well, because about 4 hours ago, the swallow that we were watching on our live camera disappeared. Let's go to it live now. It hasn't been back, and this swallow's nest is about 175 metres away from the sparrowhawk's nest. So it could be, at this point in time, we think, frankly, that that young sparrowhawk has taken our swallow, has provisioned it and given it to that female. Of course, keep your eyes peeled. We may be wrong, but it's unusual for birds that are incubating to be off for 4 hours like that. So we've got 2 different males, and we've lost our swallows. That's what I call drama. That's what I like about wildlife. When you think you've got it sorted out, it throws in a big spanner, a big surprise. If you were watching yesterday, we had more drama down in the Somerset Levels with our herons. Yes, you see, we had 3 herons' nest down there in a woods on the edge of the Levels. There was the first nest, which we were calling our branch nest or our oak tree nest. Then we had the ivy nest, and then we had the canopy nest. Now, these were all at different stages in the breeding cycle. They've been gambling on when to start breeding. Let's go back to our herons now to see for who the gamble's paying off.
It's Good Friday and a cold dawn in this ancient woodland. Of the 85 pairs of grey herons breeding here, we have been following 3. Each pair started at a different time, each trying to get their timing right to survive the unpredictable British weather. In the branch nest, nearly 4 weeks after they were laid,
I'm afraid to say we're having a few technical difficulties tonight, actually, with our heron film. We apologise for that. We're doing our best to sort it out. But in the meantime, let's think about another set of predators that are in action here. We've been watching the rabbits here. Now, they're normally underestimated, the rabbit, but in fact, their social life is absolutely fascinating. You see, there's plenty of them here. In fact, earlier today, I asked the researchers to figure out how many rabbits there were here and what tonnage of meat there was out there available to predators. Do you know there's somewhere between 3.8 and 14.4 tonnes of rabbits out there? And of course, if you've got all of this prey, then you've got to have a predator that's going to take advantage of it. Now, rabbits are eaten by a great number of things, of course. They're eaten by foxes, they're eaten by badgers, but they're also eaten by stoats. And we've been lucky enough to get some fantastic views of these extraordinary little mustelids. Here's a female stoat peeping out of the grassland, and it's tearing off, but it's not in the process of hunting. This stoat is actually moving its kits from one burrow to another. Now, it's made its home in a rabbit burrow, but look, here it is, it's bringing one of the youngsters out. It's quite a well-grown animal. Takes it across and it moves it into another burrow. Now, it could be that the burrow has been discovered by predators, foxes, badgers maybe, and she's got a bit spooked. Or it could be that that burrow's just got too fetid, because when they feed these kits, they drag the rabbits that they've caught down into the burrow and they begin to rot and it becomes an unpleasant environment. So moving the kits like this is quite frequent. In fact, we saw the same thing happening last year in pretty much the same spot. So it's not too unusual, I have to say. Absolutely fantastic. But rabbits on their own are pretty interesting. You don't need stoats to be there killing them. They are absolutely fascinating creatures. And we've been watching their behaviour quite intently. This male is easy to identify because he's got this nick in his ear. So we're able to follow him as an individual. And in rabbit society, there are dominant males, and then there's a subdominant male and one beneath that one. And the dominant male is the one which basically gets the females. And here we can see this male is scent marking. They've got scent glands on their chin. Here another male is possibly using its cheeks to scent mark on the ground. Well, it might be having a dust bath, that one. And here's that male in action again, and this time he's after a female. Now, do you see that? He sprayed her with urine, which is one of the things they do during the courtship process. Now, you may think that's relatively unpleasant, but from the rabbit's point of view, it's a way of communicating. I've no doubt at all that she can sense from sniffing that urine that he is the dominant male, and therefore she will allow him to mate with her. And as you know, these animals are prodigious breeders. I mean, they can produce young every 30 days, and they'll give birth to 3 to 7 of them. They need to do that because they've got the stoats after them, of course, they've got the buzzards and all the foxes after them. So if they weren't reproducing rapidly, their strategy didn't work. And he ends with a degree of enthusiasm, and of course, in a few days' time, that's what will happen. There'll be another litter of bunnies out there. In the meantime, of course, to keep them safe, all of the rabbits are extremely vigilant. They're all of their heads up in the air, looking out for any predators that might possibly come in. Anyway, at this point, I think we've had enough of rabbits, enough of potential predation. There'll be more of that coming up, I'm sure. Let's go over to Martin Hughes Games.
Thank you, Chris. Now, this year I'm trying to join in the BBC's Do Something Great for Nature. And I'm doing that here by featuring some of the work that the volunteers do here and trying to join in myself. And tonight, we're looking at something rather unusual. We're going to look at moths. Now, incredibly, there's about 2,500 species of British moth, and about 1,000 of them have been found here at Minsmere. And when you look at them closely, they're absolutely astonishing. If you see one doing this, it's warming up its wings, trying to get the flight muscles up to temperature before, oomph, it's off. Lovely. Now, there are moths all around us here. It's not been a great year for moths because it's so cold. But how do you catch moths? Well, here they use this. Chaps, you put this moth trap right in amongst all these nettles. Thank you very much indeed. Well, how does a moth trap actually work? Ow! You've got all these sort of egg boxes inside, what look like egg boxes, and that's because when the moths go into the trap, they want somewhere to shelter and hide. So you put them in at the bottom of the trap. I've always wanted one of these, like that, and then you actually put, oops, the top on, and this is a very, very powerful light. When I was a kid, I used to put pillowcases around the outside light. Not many moths come, but this is a really powerful light, and we'll switch it on in a minute. But moths are really very remarkable things, particularly when you look at them closely. Now, this is an angle shades moth. Now, it's very well camouflaged, but look at its eye there. Going closely, when you get closer and closer, you can see the eye is made up of tiny little lenses. They're called ommatidia, and some moths have 27,000 of these tiny little lenses. I wonder what the world looks like to them. Now, another feature, of course, is the lovely colours, the camouflage you get on moths. How do they get that colour? Well, partly it's due to this. Look at the wingtip there. Tiny little scales. Let's go closer and closer. They look a tiny bit like roof tiles, don't they? And of course, as they grow older, as the moths grow older, they lose some of those scales. If you've ever picked up a moth, they often leave a few scales in your hand. Now, there are moths all around here. We're hoping to catch some later on, but all moths have either a weird name or an extraordinary story to tell, like this one. This is called the silver Y. You can see why. You go, why? It's got a Y on its wing, beautifully camouflaged. It doesn't come from round here. This one may have flown here from North Africa. Now, a silver Y can travel 800 kilometres in a night. What they do is they just lift off on a perfect evening, go up into the sky, catch the wind, and then they'll fly up to 8 hours. And here's the incredible thing. If there's a side wind, they can detect it, and they will fly at an angle to that wind to be blown towards the destination that they want to go to. Quite unbelievable. We'll be coming back to look at some more extraordinary moths, but now, with a bit of luck, this is a bit like Frankenstein, isn't it? I'm going to turn this one on. Okay, it'll take a while to warm up, and actually it's not good to look straight into these lights. They're so powerful. Now, as I say, the weather here has been giving the moths a bit of trouble. We haven't had as many as we might expect. Should warm up later on in Springwatch, but as the weather's been difficult for us, it's also been giving Yolo Williams massive problems up in the farms.
Wow, well, we promised you drama, and we've got some. We are being battered by gale force winds here at the moment, and there are no boats at all going out to the island. And it's hard to believe that just last night we were enjoying bright blue skies. Our Springwatch base is on the mainland, and because only a minimal number of rangers are allowed to overnight on the Farne Islands, when the weather hits like this, we are completely cut off. We said it was going to be predictably unpredictable, and that's what it is. There are some huge waves crashing over the harbour wall behind me, but I'm afraid that what it means is that you and I are going to have to wait for our puffin fix.
For now, our entire crew is stuck here. Whether we like it or not. What a carry-on. It takes all day, but the winds finally die down enough for the boats to launch. We won't be allowed to film on the islands this late, but don't worry, I have a plan.
I promised you a puffin fix, and if we can't get to them, they're going to have to come to us. Hi, Ed.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, all right. What's going on? Well, it's tropical out here. It was stormy on the coast.
Yeah.
Is there always
how
like
quickly
this?
it changes, you know?
Oh, it's amazing. I should have worn a pair of shorts and a Hawaiian shirt. Anyway, the cards are in there.
Cards are in there, safe.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Right, okay, well, I'm dying to see what's in here because the cameras have been out for almost a week now. Let's get this safely back to shore.
Oh, wow. There's a bird having a probe with its bill. But of course, they will use the bill to hack away at some of the sides, but it's the feet that are the real digging machines. Here we go. It's like a clockwork little toy here. The feet going like mad, firing mud out the back. They've got to do a little bit of maintenance because they've been out at sea all winter. They come back. The burrow is not in particularly good condition sometimes. So that's what they're doing now. They're just making sure that this burrow, this new home, is perfect for them. And I tell you what, they can't move some soil as well. Look at that. They have got small claws there, and those are the ones that are so useful to dig away this soil. Very industrious, incredibly industrious, and they must be using a lot of energy to do this, and it just goes to show how important it is that they do get the burrow just right for them. I tell you, we are just so lucky to be seeing this. We're getting a glimpse into the very secretive world of the puffin. Amazing stuff, absolutely amazing stuff.
It's great, isn't it?
I love a nesting puffin. See them underground like that, it's brilliant.
I know. Many people's favourite animals are the puffins. They really, really like them. I think they look better in black and white myself, so I'm very satisfied by that.
Come on, it's
they're
the
a bit
colourful
gaudy,
beak.
that bit. I
It's
find
lovely.
it a bit gaudy. Anyway, it's not only the great view of a nest that we're providing you with. If you were watching yesterday, you'll know that we had something truly extraordinary, and everyone's been enjoying it. Look at this. For the first time, we're being able to bring you a camera on a golden eagle's nest way up in Scotland, and we're hugely indebted to David Anderson and Forestry Commission Scotland for allowing us to take up their time and giving us their expertise. We couldn't have done it without them, and what a fantastic sight that is.
We are so privileged to get these views. And you know, it's a fabulous bird and it's a fabulous mother so far. She's 5 years old and she's reared chicks for the last 2 years, and just, you can see how delicately she walks around that nest with very good reason. She's got very precious cargo in there. That one little chick that's about a week old, completely white and tiny in comparison. The mother stays with that chick practically all the time, protecting it from the cold, the rain, and from predators. And she's chosen that nest very well. It's extremely well protected from prevailing winds. But She's just so delicate all the time for such a big, powerful bird.
No, it's great scenes, isn't it?
Great scenes.
But she won't leave it, Michaela, because although it's on a relatively steep precipice, pine martens could still climb in there, ravens could obviously fly in, maybe even foxes could get to that nest as well, so she's not going to leave that chick at this stage, there's no doubt about that. There's something else we noticed, though, when we've been looking at the pictures we've got here. Look very closely, and you'll see that alongside the chicken there, just beneath the female, is an unhatched egg. Now, that's not unusual in golden eagles. They very typically lay 2 eggs because they employ a strategy called facultative canism. Facultative canism. So basically, their strategy is to have 2 young, but one will hatch in advance of the other one, and if there's a food shortage, the older sibling becomes more aggressive, and it will kill the smaller one so that it gets all of the food itself. This is part and parcel of their whole biology, and the name facultative canism comes from the biblical reference, of course, with the story of Cain and Abel, where the older brother killed the younger one. But it works for eagles, so it looks savage to us, but it works. But then again, I remember, you know, back in the old days when we were going hungry, I was dying for my tea, and I used to turn around and look at my sister and think, quite fancy those beans on toast, I've got to say.
Kick her out the high chair. But of course, you know, that's a single chick, so it's not going to be in that situation, but it does make it a lot more precious. But where's the male? We haven't seen much of the male. Well, he's out hunting most of the time, but when the female pops off the nest, the male comes in and you can see the size difference, and he's looking very shabby in comparison, and you can really see that size difference when the female comes in. She's much, much larger. But what's he brought in? Well, he's bought a meal, but it's very curious because it is a whole nest with live chicks in it, and we think that they're crows. You can see that the little golden eagle chick is getting very excited there. Now, we said that the golden eagle chick was small in comparison to the adult golden eagle, but just look at the size of that little chick that it's feeding on. It's absolutely tiny. But this is a good strategy to take a whole nest, because it means that it's got a ready-made larder of fresh food that could last a few days. The weather up there has been very rainy, and so it's hard for eagles to hunt in those sort of conditions. So this makes sense, doesn't it, Chris? But have you seen it before when they bring a whole nest in?
Yeah, raptors will come in. When you think about it, they don't want to fly backwards and forwards bringing in one tiny chick. If they can grab the nest, it's like grabbing a handbag full of prey, and they can carry that back to the nest. And if they survive some time, like you say, it's fresh meat there, isn't it? And I've seen goshawks grabbing a whole nest full of hawfinches, and certain foreign raptors frequently do this. They will bring the whole nest back, leave it there on the side, and then take things out of it as and when they want it. So it definitely makes sense from that point of view.
But imagine being a little crow chick in a nest and seeing this great big bird with its talons come and grab the whole nest and then fly off with you. Must be really, really scary.
I suppose it must.
But, you know, it is fantastic to get an insight into what happens in a golden eagle nest, and it's really exciting because we don't really know what else we're going to learn
learning all
over
the
the
time.
next 3
That's one
weeks.
of the key things. So we're hoping that we can assist David with his research, because we're watching things there that may not have been seen before, which is fantastic. Now, if you were watching yesterday, you'll see that wildlife enthusiast Richard Hopkins had been filming badgers close to his home, and he gave us some fantastic pictures. Today, another wildlife enthusiast has got in touch, this time Steve Homewood from Lewes in Sussex, and he noticed something which was seasonally very unusual. Just watch this.
I've spent most of my life at the water's edge. I've seen a lot of things, a lot of interesting things, but this is something most peculiar. I first spotted these fish about 3 years ago, and actually I was a keen fisherman then, and it was such a fascinating sight. There in front of me, in an area the size of my front room, were perhaps 1,000 fish. I've searched similar rivers nearby to find the same thing, but haven't found it. These fish are thin-lipped mullet. They're known as the grey ghosts or the uncatchables. They are mysterious in a lot of ways. They don't look very attractive from above, but if you can get down really close to them, lie right on the bank and have a look, they've got the cutest faces. They've got fins that are like little angel wings, they look like, and they kind of glide through the water. But if you were to get underneath them and look up, it kind of looks as if there's a load of sharks circling around you. It's quite a spooky looking sight. They spend most of the winter at sea. They go to spawn around about October, November, and around about the new moon in February, they emerge out of the murky main river. This is where the River Ouse, which is a tidal section here, meets the Winterbourne stream. The fresh water that they need is shut off with a sluice gate. When the tide goes out and the spring water that's behind the sluice gate is built up, and the weight of it opens the gate and it all comes bubbling out of beautiful clear water, and the mullet rush in. They don't just sit there like a load of inanimate objects. They're all swaying from one side to another and moving around, almost like a flock of starlings, and I call it a murmuration of mullet. It's like a dance or something. It's a fantastic thing to see. No one really knows what they're doing here in this spring water outlet. Some people say they're spawning, which they're definitely not. Some people say they're feeding on something specific, which they most definitely aren't, although they do occasionally take a little bit of algae while they're there. My theory is that they're having a spa. When they first appear, I'd say that something around about 75% of them have anywhere between 20 and 50% of their body covered in fungal growth. And after 3 or 4 weeks bathing in that water, it's pretty well disappeared. So maybe that icy cold water is enough to kill off that fungus that's on them. I ask people not to fish for them, not to disturb them. I think their month bathing in this spring water is somehow critical to their life cycle, if not critical to their life. I've got my favourites. There are some ugly brutes as well, but there's some very cute ones. This year there was an unusual visitor, and that's one tiny, tiny little one. Somehow it's got separated from its brothers and sisters, and it's decided to tag along with the adults. I've got to call it Nemo. Got to. It's lost for sure. I spend hours here. I come here whenever I can, whenever the tide is right and I know they're going to be there. I bring my lunch down and I sit there and I just watch them. It's mesmerising.
A murmuration of mullet enjoying a month at the river spa. I love it. But you know, mullet are just one of 400 species of fish that we have in British waters. And let's face it, fish are a bit sort of underappreciated. Well, we want to change that. We want to turn everybody into a fishy fan. And Jack Perks, who's a fish enthusiast, has decided to set up a national fish vote to find out what is the nation's favourite fish. He's already whittled it down to the top 10. So in no particular order, here they are. This is our first contender and I can feel the tension. Let's see how the bass goes down. Cod knows this is a tasty contender. Also thrown into the fishy mix, we've got trout, mackerel, roach, and don't tell them your name, pike. We have a shark in here. Will it be basking in glory? Or will this stripy number knock it off its perch? Perhaps we'll get our stickle back where it belongs, at number 1. Well, I know who I'll be voting for. Stickleback. It's got a be the stickleback, hasn't it? But anyway, stop flapping around, get on the website and cast your votes. And Jack Perks will be coming into the studio live on June the 14th to tell you what the winner is. And you know, we might even do a fish pie chart with the results of our first ever Eurofishing competition. Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? I'll tell you, there's lots of birds that really appreciate fish. One of them is the heron, and earlier on we showed you a little preview of our heron diary before we had a slight technical problem, so we thought we'd show you the rest of it.
It's Good Friday and a cold dawn in this ancient woodland. Of the 85 pairs of grey herons breeding here, we have been following 3. Each pair started at a different time, each trying to get their timing right to survive the unpredictable British weather. In the branch nest, nearly 4 weeks after they were laid, 2 of the 4 eggs have hatched overnight. With temperatures just above freezing, one parent must be ever present to keep the delicate young warm. Located on the edge of the colony, it's likely that this pair are younger or less experienced. While one looks after the nest for 4 hours at a time, the other can hunt for food. They can fly up to 30 kilometres from the nest to feed, but in the Somerset Levels, there are plenty of options on their doorstep. Herons have a hugely varied diet, catching mammals, insects, and even other birds. But they prefer to stake out favourite areas of shallow water for fish. A parent spends several hours filling its gullet before returning to the nest. Back in the branch nest, the newly hatched chicks take delivery of their first hot breakfast. A steaming, semi-digested smorgasbord to share between them. But there's a problem. It's still too lumpy for the nestlings to stomach. The parent will have to eat it again to digest it further. Like most new parents, they have a lot to learn. Down in the ivy nest, the 2 chicks have had a few weeks' head start and seem to be doing well. Their parents' decision to nest deeper in the wood and earlier on looks like it is paying off this year. But buzzards are always a threat. And so too are other herons. Every nest is watched. They are, after all, predators, and wouldn't think twice about taking an unattended chick. Up in the canopy nest, after several days of flirting, our lovebirds are finally taking the next step. The male's hormones are settling down, and the patient female can make her move. The consummation is over rather quicker than their courtship, but they'll continue to pair up over the next few days. Meanwhile, back in the branch nest, there's another happy development. The third chick is finally on its way. It takes hours to break free from its egg, helped along as best it can by its parent. But its timing may not be good. Storm Katie is heading across the Atlantic, and this colony is directly in her path. The chick will be lucky to survive the night.
I wonder what effect Hurricane Storm Katie is going to have on that heronry up those trees. Now, I'm out mothing tonight. We've got our moth trap here. And of course, what we didn't realise, it doesn't just attract moths. We're by a stagnant pool there, and there's thousands of midges coming into it as well. Anyway, that's an unforeseen side effect. Now, last night, I was lucky enough to go out with Clive Moore, who is the Mothman round here. Clive is an absolute expert. He's been studying moths for 13 years, and he can identify practically any moth in an instant. He reckons, he's being shy, but he reckons he can identify 1,000 different moths, including, now this is one of the ones we got last night. Can you see that? It's a coxcomb prominent. Now, they've either got fabulous names, these moths, or they've got an amazing story to tell. See, I think it should be cockerel's comb. No, that looks like a cockerel's comb. Now, there's that one. And here is one of the most exciting ones that we've seen. Here it is. Look at that! Yes, where is it? You can't see it because it's a micro moth. Okay, it's absolutely minuscule, but it's got a fascinating story to tell. It's called a diamondback, okay? Now, they've only been coming in ones and twos, these diamondbacks. Last night there were 174 turned up, and they are amazing because they come from France. So they've been blown by the wind right up to the North Sea, then they've been blown down to us, and we got 174 of them last night. Now, we haven't been doing tremendously well, but you out there have, and we've got a huge array of Flickr pictures from you. Now this is fascinating. This is an emperor moth, and it shows what's called dimatic behaviour. Here's another picture of it. Watch this. Dimatic behaviour is to shock predators. Those eyes, when it flicks its wings out, it'll shock a predator and make it just hesitate for a moment. A beautiful moth too. Now this is a moth. It looks exactly like a hornet. It's actually called a lunar hornet moth. Perfect mimic. So what have we got now? Here is an absolutely beautiful elephant hawk moth. Doesn't look much like an elephant, does it? It gets its name from its caterpillar. Another example of dimatic. See, it's got like an elephant's trunk, and when that's threatened, it's more dimatic behaviour. It rears up and looks like a tiny little snake to frighten its predator away. And that, just for beauty, a plume moth. Isn't that absolutely lovely? Gorgeous. Thank you very much indeed. Please keep those pictures coming in. We love them. Okay, now look, the light is one way to attract the moths, but there is another way. Come with me. This is my Keith Floyd. Now, you can also try and attract moths because of their fascination for smells and their interest in food. Now, moths have got amazing antennae. Now, the antennae are hypersensitive. Some studies have shown they can pick up a single molecule of pheromone. That's an aerial hormone. And they can smell some of them from up to 2 kilometres away. There's even anecdotal evidence that a male moth can smell a female moth from 11 kilometres away. Imagine being able to smell your partner from 11 kilometres away. Awesome. Now, that's put me in mind of my socks. That's put me in mind of my socks. Right, here we go. Here's another way of doing it. Because of that fantastic sense of smell that they have, you can attract them. So what you've got to do is you make up a delicious mixture here. We've got in here wine, and we've got, oh, we mustn't see that, that's advertising on the BBC, beer, and we've got some lovely, lovely brown sugar. And you mix it all up. It's called sugaring, and then you can dip something in like a sock, like that. Look at that. Oh, it's irresistible. And then you hang it up here with the other ones, and honestly, I'm not joking, moths will come and they'll feed on that. So if you haven't got a light trap, you can try sugaring. Okay, that's absolutely delicious. Right, well, we'll be carrying on now, trying to do a bit more moth trapping tonight, and we'll see what we get before the end of the programme. I'll be staying down here. Meanwhile, it's back to Chris and Michaela.
And of course you can join in with some mothing too from Butterfly Conservation, because from the 9th to the 11th of this month they're organising mothing events. So if you don't feel like steeping your socks in sugar and presumably washing them out later, try and get along to a Butterfly Conservation event and see some jolly good moths. You'll find out details on our website. But you know, we were watching some moths last night, those of us who were looking at the little owl's nest, because Michaela, inside that little owl's nest hole there's a species called Tenoides. Tenoides. And this is a tiny moth that lays its eggs in the faeces of the owl, and then the larvae are feeding on that, and it emerges very closely related to our clothes moth. So we think that these sorts of moths probably gave rise to our clothes moth, which is the one that causes the problems chewing things in woolens.
I've got a really good idea. Let's see if we can see one live in the nest.
Let's
Can we see one?
Can we see Tenoides in there?
We can't at the moment, but
Well,
you're
let's
right.
keep
I mean,
your eyes peeled.
I have spotted a few, but look at these poor little owls. They are really suffering from the cold, and you can see the adult there is brooding the 3 quite large chicks. But let's see what happened last night. It was a bad night for the little owls. It was cold, it was raining, it was windy, and those are not good conditions for them to hunt in. Certainly wasn't good news for the adult. Even worse news for the 3 chicks. It meant that they went a little bit hungry. They only got 6 feeds compared to 35 the previous night, and they ended up, the 3 of them, all huddled in that hole for warmth. I'll tell you what, they'll be huddling tonight, and I think I might huddle, Chris. Do you mind me huddling? Go on,
I don't do that sort of thing, as you know. The thing is, it's got cold, and that means there's going to be a lot less insect activity. Martin's going to be lucky with his moths, to be quite honest with you, tonight. And little owls are dependent on insect prey. We already saw them bring in a cockchafer, I think, yesterday on Unsprung. But with the temperature down, there won't be as much insect activity. They have to switch to other things, and they will do that. Small mammals and occasionally birds. Look at this. This is what we saw this morning. So after a night of fasting, no insects, one of the adults came back in. It's a bit of squawking. In it comes, and look there, in its beak is a bird. And if you watch carefully, as it turns it around here, just there, look at the head, that's the little bandit mask of a blue tit. There are no gape flanges there, so we know that that's an adult blue tit. So the little owls, it seems, have been resourceful. They failed last night to provision with insect food, but they've been out this morning, and they've caught a blue tit. Pretty good going, good going.
Not good news for our blue tits though. I mean, these birds, as we're saying, they're really suffering from the cold and the rain and everything. And now the tits in the woods are suffering because of predation from not only the sparrowhawk, but now the little owl as well.
Yeah, and it's not just the blue tits. Earlier, you'll know that one sparrowhawk, potentially a young male that's now feeding the female on her nest, might have taken one of the swallows. We can go live to the swallow's nest because one of them has turned up. But it's not incubating the eggs, it's sat on the side of the nest. So it could be that this is the male, I can't see from this float, this is the male and therefore not incubating those eggs. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled on this to see if the other bird returns.
Why wouldn't the male incubate the eggs?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it may not even be the male that's related to those eggs at all. This could be just a curious individual. They do frequently investigate each other's nest because they will go in and actually, males will turf eggs out of a nest so that they can get the female to relay another clutch with them. So that may not be related to any of the swallows in our nest. We just have to keep our eyes peeled, and you can do the same, of course, by watching online on the red button on our website. Those cameras are there, both the sparrowhawk, the plucking post and the swallow.
Now, we may be keeping an eye on spring here as it happens now in Minsmere, but of course our camera teams started at the beginning of spring with their filming. And right the other end of the country, right up north in the Orkneys, our cameraman Raymond Besant, who lives there, managed to get some rather lovely early springtime Scottish beauty.
On a sunny day, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Sandy was a Caribbean island with its turquoise seas, but it lies in the northeast corner of Orkney with its coast exposed to the North Sea. When the Vikings named Sandy, they kept things really simple. It literally means sandy island. The sandy beaches are a perfect place to find the harbour seals hauling out, and the sand dunes you'll find fulmars actually nesting directly on the sand. The beaches are only pristine in the way they are because they're protected from the worst of the winter storms by a forest, but it's only a forest that you're going to see at low tide. A massive kelp forest surrounds the island, forming a natural breakwater against the rough seas and the pounding waves. The best way to see the kelp forest is to actually get in the water. If you're lucky enough to be in there when the sun's shining and the rays are dappling down through all the fronds, it's a really beautiful, magical place. The spring and then into summer, the newly growing kelp looks really clean and sleek, and in this light the stalk, or the stipe as it's known, seems almost black. Other creatures are in amongst the holdfasts, crabs and crustaceans, and often you find the stipes really festooned with these gorgeous red seaweeds as well. The holdfasts that hold the kelp onto the rocks are extremely strong, so it takes a lot of force from the winter storms to rip that off, but that's exactly what happens. And massive amount of kelp lands on the beaches and piles high, almost 2 meters in places. It'll come ashore at any month of the year, but for the birds and animals that rely on it, it's most important that the kelp is on the beaches in early spring. From a distance on warm days, the kelp looks really hazy. And what it actually is clouds and swarms of kelp flies that have descended on the rotting weed to feed and lay their eggs. The seaweed and the surrounding sand becomes a writhing mass of maggots, and this doesn't go unnoticed by all the other birds. The kelp provides migrating birds that are on passage through Orkney with a real food bonanza. It's really a migratory fueling stop. The biggest change that I've noticed as spring has progressed is the influx of a lot of new wading birds. So in particular, a lot of turnstones have turned up in the last part of April, and also really nice numbers of sanderling have turned up at the same time. Sanderling feed right on the edge of the incoming waves. They're really busy and they get pushed up and down the beach by the incoming tide, and then after a particular warm where the sand's softer with the incoming water, they'll also feed on kelp maggots that have started to come up through the sand. The turnstones will land and feed directly on the kelp beds themselves, and unlike the sanderling, they can actually pick the kelp flies out of the air, so when they're absolutely surrounded by these flies, they don't really need to work very hard. Within the space of 3 weeks, they've almost doubled their weight, and they're putting on around 2.5 grams in fat a day. which is an incredible amount. They can then fly direct to Greenland, to their breeding grounds from Sandy. One of the things I like to do when I come to Sandy is to try and catch up with the local otters. Sandy's really good for otters because the big kelp beds on the coast provide them with an environment to catch plenty of fish. And as the year progresses, more fish will come in to spawn and to hide and to hunt, and the otters can take advantage of that. I think one of the really fascinating things about Sandy is just how everything is connected by the kelp, either directly or indirectly. It's a wild and magical place, and I know that I'll come back again each spring.
What a beautiful place. Absolutely stunning. And you know, marine algae also provides rich pickings for birds down here at Minsmere too, and our cameramen have spotted ringed plovers taking advantage of this. And of course it's replenished every day, at least once with the tides. And here we've got one of those little ringed plovers, looking for invertebrates, crustaceans, isopods, maybe even small mollusks. They're visual hunters. They look for things and then peck them up with that short, stubby bill. Beautiful pictures. Look at that with the light behind it.
Do you remember those sunny days a few days ago?
Just about.
It certainly hasn't been sunny. It's been very rainy, which has affected lots of our birds nesting here. Let's have a quick check-in on one of our live nests, the stone curlew, because this is one we're particularly worried about. We showed you earlier that this bird got off its eggs for an hour and 10 minutes last night when it was really cold. So it was due to hatch tomorrow. So let's keep our eyes on that live nest to see if that egg is going to hatch. I don't think its chances are good, quite frankly.
Well, I don't know. It's a long time to have been off. You know,
Yeah.
The egg would have lost a lot of temperature, and it is critical right at the end of that, as Martin said earlier, with reference to his chickens, which always seem to come into it somehow.
Let's see how Martin's getting on, in fact. Is he still down in the woods with some sticky stuff? Martin, what are you up to?
Oh, hello, are you still there? I'm loving my mothing and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
I think he's been at the Sugar. I think he's been at the Sugar. We will be back tomorrow on BBC Two at 6:30 for Unsprung. Got a fabulous guest tomorrow. Who we've got? We've got Jason Singh, who's coming in to do some beatboxing for us, which is fantastic. And in our 8 o'clock show, we've got a Predator Fest, starting with this. Honestly, oh my goodness me, that's absolutely astonishing. Gaia Falcon.
We continue to learn more about the Goldie Horn of the raptor world.
And we've seen a
golden
little bit of
eagle.
them this evening, but we've also got stoats and their kits. And look at these, a little bit bigger and active as well.
So we will see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock. It's a bit of a Springwatch fest tomorrow because we've got an hour-and-a-half show. We've got a real treat. We'll show you plenty of wildlife in that hour-and-a-half. So make sure that you tune in tomorrow at 8 o'clock till 9:30 on BBC Two. We'll see you then.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.